Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dynasty Depot, your one-stop shop for all your fantasy football tribulations. I'm this week's host, Tom, along with Andrew and Wyatt. Now, let's jump right into Week 10's shipment. Let's start with some surprises of the week. Andrew, who do you got? Who's your surprise of the week?
My surprise of the week was Brian Robinson, the RB1 of the week. He virtually has been out of the pass game from Antonio Gibson, has taken all of the reps in the pass game, and he was 6 targets this week and has capitalized on all 6 of them this week with over 100 receiving yards. His ground game was rough to say the least, but now that he's a dual threat running back on tape, I think it's going to open up his game a lot in the future, especially with Antonio's contract kind of up in the air for next year. I think I have some pretty high hopes for Brian.
Is it fair to say that he's now a dual threat? He had one game where he caught the ball. It was a good game.
You have to respect it now. You have to respect it now.
You do have
I'm
to plan
not saying he's a dual threat, but you have to respect it now. So
Okay.
We'll see what that brings in the future, but it's definitely something.
I mean, he's a young back. It's a good start.
I don't want to call him a dual threat. I think it's very possible, but you have to respect 6 catches for over 100 yards. So from the backfield.
That's better than most receivers this last week.
I mean, one of them was a pretty outlier touchdown, deep pass, right? Correct? Or he broke
one was a 49-yard backfield catch. He broke a tackle. So he did do work for it. It wasn't like it was just a give me.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you take that out, 5 receptions on over, I think 70 yards. If you take out that 50 yards, so yeah, I mean that's still a hell of a game for a running back. So in the receiving game. So, what about you, Wyatt? Who's your surprises of the week?
I've got another Washington Commander going on. I've got Dyami Brown. Statistically, not as good of a game as Brian Robinson had, but he's been very quiet all season. He's been sitting at around 20, in the mid 20% snap share, and just really hasn't done much of anything from it. But he had only 18% snap share for Week 10 against Seattle. 2 targets and 2 receptions, so caught both of them for 41 yards and a touchdown. Pretty big spike in his performance, which I was glad to see, the connection between Dyami Brown and Sam Howell, college connection. But, not sure if that'll continue, but it was cool to see.
It was fun. That was a fun game to watch in general.
Fun game to watch.
I think you have someone else on your surprises of the week, Wyatt.
I did also include TJ Hawkinson. I have to apologize for ever saying TJ Hawkinson was worth considering selling. Josh Dobbs is cooking. I was not familiar with his game.
Different scenario,
but it hasn't diminished his value at all. He's still a fantastic tight end and a receiving tight end. So I'd expect that he retains the same value.
Who said that TJ is going to go up but definitely stay the same when you said to sell TJ? Because Josh Dobbs loves his tight ends. He loves running that ball, and he's a fun person to watch.
He is so exciting to watch.
He also practices in the off season with TJ, so they instantly had that.
Is that a connection that's already?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
When he hit the ground running, he knew him already. They're friends. They practice in the off season together. Yeah, that's his guy. So the fact that he got hooked up with him, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, get Dobbs at the trade line.
That's actually very worth considering.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is your take kind of is irrelevant to now because it's a whole new quarterback. They might even change the offensive scheme and system. So it's really hard to say who JJ could be not as good now. We really have no idea what's going to happen when he comes back.
Yeah. I guess the only one that we have a reliable, even impression upon is knowing that Hawkinson and Dobbs have already, taken some snaps together, off the field.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to know.
They got some chemistry going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So what about you, Killer? You have an interesting one today.
Yeah. So my surprise of the week is the fact that Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, has not been fired yet. I just can't understand it for the life of me. This guy doesn't deserve his job, and it is insane to me that they're wasting so much time and talent with this guy. Like, let's go through his history really quick. This guy is the D coordinator for the 2020 Rams. Didn't win the Super Bowl with him, but they did have Ramsey and Aaron Donald, and he only threw up a negative 76 point differential. He gets hired as the Chargers head coach. He goes 9-8, and then he goes 10-7. This is with a top tier rookie contract quarterback. This is with, I mean, all of the weapons that they have, Eckler, everything. This is with Bosa and Mac. Like, he has so many pieces to be doing something with, and he is squandering all of them, both in real life and in fantasy. And it's crazy to me that the Bills can look at their situation and fire their offensive coordinator, which I don't really know if that addresses their problem, but they're at least addressing something. And the Chargers just let this guy continuously lead their team into purgatory. It is insane to me. All right, rant over.
All right, I want to go into your next one, and then I want you to go right into letdowns of the week, too. I kind of see what you're foreshadowing here. I kind of like it.
Yeah, so, I mean, surprise of the week, Jacksonville's offense threw a goose egg up. Like, they just 0.0 from the beginning of the game. Trevor Lawrence couldn't get through past his first read. I don't know if we want to call it the Chase Young effect, but it was a bad game. They're going to be moving forward. They're not even going to watch that tape.
Yeah, not much you can salvage there.
No, it's not even worth the time. Like, you just have to move forward. Yeah. An embarrassing at-home upset, but it was a good team, so.
Mm-hmm.
So what about your letdowns of the week?
Letdown of the week? I mean, Jacksonville's offense, obviously. I feel bad for anyone who has anybody on that fantasy team, but we don't have to dissect that incredibly.
I mean, we can. I know that you're a proud owner of T-Law Ridley, so we can get into it a little bit here, so.
I mean, they collectively had like 7 points. It's pathetic. My quarterback won, my wide receiver won. It's bad. I'm looking at playing Zach Wilson maybe next week just because it's somehow better. I don't know. Letdown of the week, Micah Parsons. I mean, the Cowboys' entire team did fantastic. Micah Parsons, a lot of pressures, but unfortunately that does not equate to fantasy points. That is a real-life impact in the game. Dude is an absolute monster and stud, but unfortunately for our purposes, he kind of showed nothing on the fantasy scoreboard, and so that's definitely a letdown. I think they schemed around him, which is smart. That's probably the only thing that the Giants did effectively on the field.
I've noticed a trend as a Micah Parsons owner that if you think he should have a good game, sub him out. If you think he's going to have a good game, they are going to take him out of the game plan, and they're going to beat that other team. In this case, it was the Giants. The Cowboys are going to have to beat the Giants other ways that isn't Micah Parsons. And I've noticed that if you think Micah's going to have a big game, you should just bench him. If you think it's going to be a good game, I think he's going to go off in points. And I've noticed that trend. If it's a good game, he goes off in points. If it's a blowout game, he's scoring sub 5 points.
I think that's true for all like superstar young defensive players. Like Nick Bosa didn't really have a lot of great games. He's definitely impacting the game, but they scheme around the guy and they kind of have to. So it's the same kind of thing. Having said that, I would play him every week. There's not going to be a week where I'm not going to have him on my roster just because I know I would sit him in a week when he pops off.
Yeah.
It's Micah Parsons. Like I'm rolling those dice every week.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I think I talked to Wyatt about it. I was like, I really don't think Micah's going to have a big game this week, but it's one of those things. I wasted a 3rd round draft pick in a startup league for Micah Parsons.
He'll be good for 10 years.
I need to use him. So I don't regret the pick, but I'm not going to bench my 3rd round pick in a startup league just because I don't think he's going to have a big game because he was my 3rd round pick, you know?
I think it's just a risk you got to eat.
Yeah, irregardless, he's like one of the premier defenders in the league, one of the best at what he does. There's really no arguing that. It's subbing him out, even if it's like likely that he might not have as good of a game, is just ludicrous.
Yeah,
it's just not worth it. Because then if he does, I mean, he's
gonna
beat
yourself up for the whole week.
He's a machine. I'd rather lose out on somebody else that might have gotten 3 points. that sub out Micah Parsons.
There's not
So
many defensive players that could put up Micah Parsons level points. Let's put it that way. His
I
ceiling
agree.
is insane.
That's a
His
good,
ceiling's
yeah.
40 points.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah.
So Wyatt, who's your letdowns of the week?
I also sort of had to. One is just sort of been consistent, and this is not like a knock on the player himself. Joey Porter Jr. has been quiet from a fantasy perspective. Really only showing up mostly with like a few 4 tackles in Green Bay. He's been completely a lockdown defender, but it's one of those. It's at the point where he's literally creating an island. He's being avoided, and teams are just targeting somewhere else on the Pittsburgh defense instead. I would just consider someone else. It's going to get more targets.
I think that's an important note, and I know we've talked about it. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast before, but being a number 1 corner as like a premier defender, you're talking about your Jair Alexander, your Sauce Gardner, your Joey Porter Jr. now. And others to name, they don't get targets. You need to be targeted. You need to have the ball on your side of the field, and it's very similar, like we just talked about, with a premier pass rusher. Except the pass rusher is always going to have an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
The quarterback is only going to have. What's up?
If you're going for a DB, do you want a Diggs? Obviously he's injured, but I'm just saying a guy that throws up interceptions, like where you could point at him and look at him, count him, and be like, this is the guy I want? Or do you want like name recognition type guys that are just
I think avoiding the names is one of the biggest things you have to do with defensive backs, maybe other than safeties, and nickel backs. Woj and I have talked about this a lot. You're really looking for people that are ball hawks in terms of contributing fantasy production.
So guys
they're
that
going to
get
be
the
involved.
ball.
Yeah. Floating
One
around.
person that
you want the turnover machines.
Mm-hmm.
I would even say that I am a huge fan of nickel cornerbacks when it comes to DBs, because they're going to be up around the run.
Can you give us an example or two?
I actually invested in Rasul Douglas. I actually just dropped Rasul Douglas because I don't like how he's being used at Buffalo. But in Green Bay, when he was there, he was supposed to be our nickel. He still played the inside.
Sorry, did you say you didn't like how Rasul Douglas is getting used in his 3 quarters that he's been there?
Here we go. The Buffalo and the
he
Green
just
Bay fans
got there.
Rasul Douglas.
No. I know. But he's the positional aspect of it. He's not playing on the part of the field where I'm not saying his performance. I'm just saying his part of the field and where he plays his game now is different than how it was in Green Bay, which is not a knock at him at all. He's a great cornerback, and I'm happy you guys have it, because you guys have a lot of other problems going on now. But
I think for fantasy playoffs, he's going to have his stuff together. He's going to know that playbook, and he's going to be a real big-time impact on a Bills D that needs to squeak into that 7 slot for the wild card. I think he's going to...
So you're saying that Rasul will have fantasy production on the Bills? As your best corner on that Bills team right now, you think he's going to get production value?
I think once he gets his feet wet, he absolutely will. He has to. If they want to make the playoffs, Von Miller ain't doing anything.
But that's what we just talked about.
Up.
That's what we just talked about. You're not going to throw to your best guy on defense. So he's not going to be an island.
He's not good enough to be an island. So people are going to throw that way.
He's ranked number 12 in the league right now.
He's not an island.
That's not an island, but that's high enough.
Rasul Douglas. Still good, but not an island. He's in a tier with other dudes.
He's not going to get as many targets, though. Number 12 is still an elite cornerback. You're going to try to throw somewhere else before you go to Rasul.
I'm not going to convince you, but we will see. He will throw up some stats. I mean, he's played 6 quarters, and he already has a fumble recovery.
He might throw up stats and make me want to throw up. Who was your other person, Wyatt?
I had Taysom Hill. He's been fantastic this year, and just had a really off game with 4.3 fantasy points. it's really started kicking it up around like the mid-season mark, around like game 6, just throwing up numbers, and then just kind of dropped off.
Do you think that Taysom Hill's gameplay has been thrown off a little bit because their quarterback situation's a little...
Absolutely.
Okay, so do we think that he'll command a bigger share of this offense with this quarterback controversy going on right now, or it was better when it was stable because he can be that gadget kind of guy?
Yeah, it was probably better when it was stable. I'm not sure that it will completely diminish, but with things being as uncertain as they are, with somebody that's like a gadget player, you have to have everything else be predictable, because then there's way too much variables. So his role might be slightly diminished, at least for like maybe a week or two. But he's still a very interesting player. And he's not worth dropping. That's for sure.
Sorry, I am rearranging my screen real quick. So my letdown of the week is definitely Will Levis and
Mr. Goldjack.
I'm sure it is.
I'm on record of saying that he deserves a gold jacket after one game, and I still think that is a valid take with how I'm watching his film. But it was disappointing against the Bucs, which is a mediocre defense, that he only put up 200 yards and a pick. So you don't think the Bucs is a mediocre defense?
I think
actually might be a really bad defense.
I don't think they're mediocre. I think they got some stars. I don't think they're a great defense. I think
it's all right.
Maybe an aging defense, but like Winfield is a player. Kevin White. He's a player. They still got Vitavia. So, like, I mean, they got some dudes. Levante David, he's getting old, but, like, I mean, he still does stuff. I don't think it's as bad as you're making it seem.
They're ranked 24th in the league right now when it comes to
great
yards.
Team. Like, I'm just saying from a fantasy perspective, that defense isn't irrelevant.
So it's mediocre?
No, I'd say it's a little better than that. It's
okay. That's fair. I mean, they do let up a lot of fantasy points. I mean, if you look at some of them, they have been in some of the bigger shootouts of the year.
For sure.
So that's why I was expecting Will Levis to have. Yeah, I was expecting him to have a lot of opportunities. I think I'm on record saying it was feasible for him to have 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Bucs, and he obviously fell short. I think the 200 yards is definitely something good to look at, but overall, I think he really underperformed in a game that I think could have been a big one for him. So,
I mean, he put up 6 fantasy points. Sorry, he put up less than 6 fantasy points.
He did.
Now, you've also been on record for absolutely taking a dump on Lamar Jackson for doing sub 12 points. So this is less than half of that, and we're still... Oh, is it because he's a rookie?
No, it's because I picked him up off of waivers and didn't spend a first-round pick on him.
Oh, so it's what other people did. But, like, just apples to apples. Lamar's a better quarterback.
I get what you're saying. That first-round pick could have been, spent elsewhere, but, like, claiming, like, Will Levis off waivers doesn't,
it's negligible value. Like, you might have spent some fab on it, right? But like, it's not like you wasted a first round talent or multiple first round talents or whatever.
We have
you got
8 games left. Let's say Levis plays all 8. How many games is he going to pop off 20 plus? Maybe one more.
What's the schedule?
At Jacksonville, Carolina at home, Colts at home, in Miami, Houston at home, Seattle at home, at Houston, home at Jacksonville.
Kind of a mixed bag there.
I can see 4 of those games being a potential shootout.
You have 5 division games here. You have both Houston games, both Jacksonville games, and then Colts at home.
Houston is a team that has been in shootouts.
Yeah, almost every game they just happen to be
Those are
winning those.
high-scoring games.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet the over on all of those games. I think that both of those games have potential for him to go up. He's going
Jacksonville
up
could
against
go
the
either way.
Colts.
Like
Yeah,
just
it's either their defense is going to be
scoring-wise.
locked down or
it's
Yeah.
no in
it's going
between.
to be wide
And
open.
same with Colts. I mean, Colts have games where like there's 15 total points for both teams, and then there's other games where it's like there's 60 points. So
Yeah. So I really feel like the bag is like Wyatt said, it's a mixed bag. I think there's definitely potential there, but
he's a guy that you want to keep on your team for next year.
I'm keeping him there.
For sure.
I
think that's
changed
smart.
my team name to Will Levis, so I'm going to stick with him probably for the rest of the year, and we'll see how that works out for us. So
That's a big endorsement.
it is a big endorsement, but I'm jumped off the love train and I'm on the Will Levis train. So let's ride, baby. So
All right,
I think we should go into the injury report now.
Injury report, yeah.
Yeah, there was a few
Tannehill's still above.
notable quarterback injuries. Obviously, as we talk about the Saints controversy, Derek Carr going down with a concussion, and also I believe a right shoulder. So it's kind of unclear as to what will happen there, but they have a bye for this upcoming week anyway. So he's, got a much more solid chance to get ready by the next game they play. Baker went down. He was grabbing at his thumb in his hand. It was clearly pretty aggravated, and he hurt it it looked like a few times through the persistence of that game. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And then Taylor Heineke, not sure that one's going to be as fantasy relevant for you, but that's a desperate play. Alexander Madison going down with a concussion is pretty significant because that could really clear up that already interesting Vikings backfield. We'll see how that goes. He is probably going to be questionable to return, but certainly one to keep an eye on. Other than that, Kayvon Thibodeau also went down with a concussion. Then Quan Alexander was a big one with the torn Achilles. It looks like so.
Been a lot of Achilles this year.
There's been a lot of Achilles issue. I'm not sure whether it's a correlation or causation. Some of them have been directly a controversy of the turf fields, but not all of them. So it is
it's really like a 50-50 shot, which is not a good argument for the difference between turf and not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at historical data, it's going to show that turf fields are more likely to have non-contact injuries. But this year, it's been a lot of Achilles, and it's been on field and turf. It's been on grass and turf. So, definitely interesting on that one. Thank you for the injury report of week 9 heading into week 10 heading into week 11.
Got you.
With that, I think we should run into our buy sells of the week. We have some defense here, and I think we should start with some defense on how to buy it with Kilger.
All right.
Who's your buy of the week?
Defense matters. My buy is this is a person who has been Defensive Player of the Year. This is a person who has been in Pro Bowls. This is a person who's only been in the league 5 years. This is their 6th year. This is someone who is not having a great year, just came off of an injury. Someone that you could buy pretty cheap and will probably bounce back. And if not, I mean, you're buying them pretty cheap, so not that bad of an investment. Shaquille Leonard, absolute cornerstone of the Colts defense. He has been throwing up between 4 to 8 fumbles a year, a bunch of fumble recoveries, couple interceptions, 120 plus tackles every year. Last season he was injured. This season he hasn't really done much. I believe that he, after the bye, is going to resume some level that he is known for defensively. And so I think now is the perfect time to buy him cheap and ride him in the fantasy playoffs. His buy is this week, by the way.
I don't hate that take.
Yeah,
I think
time.
The one thing that I'm definitely trying to do at this point, if you are a contending team, and I guess I'll go into my buy to kind of hand in hand with what I'm about to say and what Kilger just said, especially when we're talking about linemen and your front seven and your linebackers, is I think depth at this time of the year is so good because teams are rotating. People are going to get injured at this time of the year. It's about to get cold. We're about to go into fantasy playoffs. Having depth in some of these more crucial roles, going out and getting someone like Shaq Leonard, or my buy of the week is TJ Edwards, who has been the leading tackler for the Bears and kind of been a sleeper because he's been on the Bears. Don't get me wrong, the people who have TJ Edwards are going to know the value that he brings being a consistent tackler, but the Bears have historically been good at finding these linebackers that are off-ball linebackers, the ones that are getting the tackles, the ones that are sitting back in coverage. And he's putting up the points to prove it. He's in 93% of leagues. Yeah. Both relatively young. So not only is it going to help you this year, but hopefully that's a cornerstone of your team for years to come, which is even more worth it for a contending team to go out and get him because you're not trying to just sell out for this year. It's Dynasty. We're looking at next year. We're looking at the years later. And I think getting a quality defensive player right now for a contending team is highly recommended. You're not going to have a high draft pick if you're contending. And I think maybe ditching your first to gain some of these high-scoring linemen are not a bad idea. So
I like linebackers specifically as defensive pieces just because they do, like you said, they do get a ton of tackles, but then they also have chances for a couple sacks. They got
sacks, maybe fumbles too.
Fumbles, interceptions. Like they're the guys that kind of benefit from maybe a good defensive line or even possibly a bad defensive line because they get more of a share of that defensive pie. It just kind of depends if the defensive line is punching the ball out and they're jumping on it, or if they're knocking the ball and they can catch an easy gimme interception. They're right in the middle of the field. They're perfect for consistent defensive points, I'd say.
Yeah, I really want to highlight the consistency issue because like across the rest of the defense, a lot of the times there's not going to be as much consistency. Even some of the most involved guys are going to rely on picks or sacks, but linebackers are getting so many tackles by volume that it is, you can get a consistent 12, 15 points a game from a premier linebacker, and you were, laughing to the bank with that in terms of having a positional advantage.
100%. I think
the linebacker is comparative to a running back. Like their window of points is consistent. It's not like a wide receiver where, Stephon Diggs could have a 2-point game and then a 30-point game. They're consistently producing for you.
I agree with that. I think they're more stable. They're a lot more stable of a position than
I mean, we were just having the conversation about, an island corner versus just like a corner that might be getting more picks and stuff like that. You really don't have to worry about that with linebackers. Their tackle volume kind of pads that so that it's, the interceptions that's gravy.
Yeah. Like he's injured right now, but another one, I think he's injured in concussion protocol right now. But Quay Walker is another one of those ones that kind of is a sleeper. He's the leading tackler on his team, or was until he got injured. And
very young.
Very young. It's his second year. Has a temper tantrum, but that's not going to show up on fantasy
score sheet. Yeah.
But he is.
The Packers have Rodgers for years. They could deal with temper tantrums.
Pushing athletic trainers twice in one season, I don't know about that one. But those
are rookie numbers.
Yeah,
we need some Deshaun numbers, like 30.
But I definitely agree that I think linebackers are definitely more like that running back position where it's just a lot more consistent. So, but defense does matter, but we played two sides of the football here at Dynasty Depot. So let's get on to the offensive side with Wyatt, who is your offensive buy of the week.
So I like Cade Otton. He's only had one recent plus 20-point game, and that was in the Houston shootout in week 9. Had sub 10s and a lot of sub like 5s. I think he's a really solid contributor, and Baker seems to like hitting him when they're hot. I think Cade Otton is an underrated tight end in the league from a fantasy perspective. He's really not that highly rostered. You might not even have to buy him in your league. He is at the very least a consistent backup tight end in almost any fantasy league.
He's not a kitchen table name. Like, no, I would bet that not many people even know about him. He's only been in the league, what, a year or two?
I think he's got 1 year under his belt.
Yeah. I like that.
Cade Otton's owned in 78% of leagues.
That's a significant bit, but not a whole lot.
I'd
No,
say
it's not a whole lot.
30% rostered, which sounds more realistic to me.
Yeah.
That's what I see on Sleeper, at least.
Yeah.
But cool. So I think with that, I think we should get into our sells of the week, which I think are very contentious. I think across the board, I think all of us have a very interesting sell that we all have to defend ourselves for. So I guess we'll start with Kilger. Who's your sell of the week?
My sell of the week is Saquon Barkley. I also think that the Giants should have traded him. Is he Mr. Giant? Yes, absolutely. He's the face of that franchise because they have nothing else to cling to offensively. I just think he's a 26-year-old running back who's been in the league for 6 years. This is his 6th year, sorry. 5 complete years. He's had injury history. He's a kitchen table household name. I think that now would be the time where you would cash out on top at least, and you can dish him out and still get premium value for, especially if there's a team that is competing in the playoffs. Now would be your time to decide if you're riding the Saquon train until the wheels fall off, or if you want to sell it and cash out on top. I would cash out on top, but that is because I'm not competing in the playoffs this year.
He came out and said that he wants to break the Giants' all-time rushing record, which would put him at least 4 more seasons in New York. Does it happen? I think it has to happen. I know, with him staying in New York, I think it has to happen.
Oh.
You can't gut the whole team. You got to keep something, and the only something that they have is Thibodeau and Saquon.
Yeah, to me, it's like Zeke on the Cowboys. Zeke on the Cowboys is iconic. He was amazing, but they really should have dished him out while he was still worth something. They sat on that way too long. They paid him way too much money. Granted, we're bringing this into a fantasy perspective where we don't have to worry about that. But if you could have traded Zeke before Pollard broke out, you would have gotten premium picks, players, whatever for that. And his value just kind of continued to decline. And you see that in New England. He does nothing now.
I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember that for myself. We're gonna continue this conversation, but we'll put that conversation on the back burner there.
All right. I mean, let's date this and let's talk value right now. What would you give for Saquon?
What? Saquon?
Saquon's value right now.
By the way, I'm not saying timestamp. I'm saying that I'm going to talk about this in 2 minutes. But the value on Saquon, I think Saquon is definitely worth a late second to a third round right now on a team that only has one player that can make plays. And when you're talking about...
We're talking about fantasy value, not real life, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. See, I think he's worth more than that. I think someone would trade more for him.
I think I think you could easily ask for a first from someone for Saquon.
I think so too. Yeah. I think your value of him is
even if it's an over ask. Like, even if you're asking for too much there, just like, let's be real, the name alone in a lot of fantasy leagues is going to carry, some of that asking price.
He's a dual threat back. He is a name. Yes, totally agree.
He's a workhorse.
He's a workhorse. He's the only thing that they give the ball to, basically, until he can't run anymore. He's exhausted. And he throws up 12 to, well, I guess he's got a 7-point game, but he throws up like 10 to 130-point game. So there's some outliers, but I'd say it's 10 to 20 points a game. It's consistent.
So you're telling me to sell him because of his longevity and his situation. So why would I give up a first-round pick for someone that I don't know, based off of your reasoning, if he's going to even be in New York next year? We know how the market's going to be, and he's going to be a 27-year-old injury-prone running back demanding money. I don't know if this dude's going to be
difficult. Coaching situation's also difficult in New York right now. So
you're only going to pay a first for this playoffs. You're only going to pay that capital for this year, because you don't know where he's going to be next year. You don't even know if he's going to get signed next year.
I agree. What I'm saying is he's old, and you should dish him out while he's still a premium value. What I will also say is I think that someone competing this year in the playoffs would trade for him. I absolutely think that. And I think that they would pay pretty well for him. That's running back depth going to the fantasy playoffs. That's nice, especially if it's someone who's not going to have a long career. It's kind of like what San Francisco does. They just plug people in to hope to win it this year.
Yeah, okay. I don't agree with it, but I see
you
where
have
that's coming from.
And you're not competing, why keep him? Like, he's not going to be able to do much for you in the next couple of years.
That's fair. Get the value out of him. I just think
liquidate while it's still an asset.
I find a hard time thinking that I would get a first for Saquon, because realistically, he is only going to be on
deal,
fantasy.
Bro. Huh? You got to work it. Art of the deal.
I don't know. I don't even know if I would be able to pay a first.
You got to say a little prayer to the fleece fairy.
You never know when you can catch someone at their weakest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to quote another great Fantasy Depot legend, all the people in your league are idiots. Like, go for it.
They're all idiots. They're all
all idiots. Go, yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Catch them at their weakest. Wait till they're down.
Now that we've talked about running backs, I want to go into selling Tony Pollard, which
we all.
What's your reasoning?
We'll get
we
to
all
it.
have running backs. We all have running backs.
What's your reasoning, though? Is it any different from what I just said?
It's very similar to what you just said. The only difference is that Cowboys have someone else on their team that they are starting to utilize more and more, and his name is Rico. All right, and Rico is not looking like Pollard did when he replaced Zeke, but they are trying to find other options. And I'm not saying Rico is the guy, but we've seen this story before with the same exact ownership who likes doing this. And I think you sell Tony while you have a chance. He has 2 touchdowns this year. They both came in the first week, and they are on a high-powered offense. The Cowboys have scored 22 offensive touchdowns this year. They have a lot of defensive touchdowns too. It was really crazy when I looked up the stat. I can't remember how many defensive, but it's a lot. And 2 touchdowns, which were their first 2 touchdowns, maybe 2 out of their first 3 touchdowns against the Giants, was Tony Pollard. The rest of the season, nothing. He is scoring consistent under 10 points, around the 10-point range. And there is no signs that he is going to get the ball. Since Pollard had those 2 touchdowns, Rico's had 2 or 3 touchdowns out of the 20 others. There's going to be a new back in the Cowboys backfield. I'm not going to say it's Rico. I don't have confidence in saying it's going to be Rico, but it's not going to be Tony Pollard here sooner rather than later. And I think you sell him while he still has a name. Like you said, people know who Tony Pollard is. And you can sell him to a competitive team to have that depth. Or you might be able to finesse a trade into a rebuilding team to see where Pollard's going to go and see if you want to invest in that new situation that Pollard's going to be in. The only time I think that ever worked was DeMarco Murray, but if someone wants to go into it, they can try it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely getting a case of deja vu here in the Tony Pollard scenario. So I don't disagree.
I think
Surprisingly, honestly,
I think Tony Pollard has more in the tank than Saquon.
I think that's the only contention I would provide.
Yeah, as a backup for so many years behind Zeke, he didn't take all those big hits and that Saquon almost had to absorb. So I think I wouldn't be opposed to buying Tony Pollard right now. Play him for a year, possibly two, and then dish him and still be able to get pretty good value.
I think
the second half of the season is going to be better than his first half.
I think that Tony Pollard is going to have a shared backfield next year, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. I think
and
Dallas
you can
is
sell him as an RB1 right now.
I think Dallas is going to do that moving forward, just from a business perspective. If they looked at how much money they wasted on Zeke comparatively to where they, else they could have spent it and stuff, and I think they're never going to have one running back again, just because they want to be able to lean on someone else or pay, committee.
I mean, it's a really fresh wound to them. It's in the they're definitely constantly thinking about that contract.
Jerry doesn't forget. It was embarrassing.
And Jerry's also a very prideful person. But just to put into perspective, Zeke last year for the Cowboys had 12 touchdowns, and they let him walk after 12 touchdowns. I think he had something in the ballpark of 600, 700 yards. And I know it mostly was financial, right? We're not going to pay this dude because he's not performing the way that we paid him to perform. But
it was more than that.
Yeah, but they still let a running back walk because he had 12 touchdowns and Pollard has 2 and sub-performance in the running game.
He's getting those goal line jumps. He got a lot
Rico's
of them,
getting those goal line jumps. Rico's getting red zone carries.
Yeah, okay. But
he's getting vultured by some random rookie.
Zeke was washed last year. He got a couple good jumps into the end zone. Is kind of what I'm accounting for those touchdowns.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about Pollard.
Yeah. No, I'm accounting for. Yeah. He had 12 touchdowns, but I'd be cool walking with that because you could plug in Jamal Williams and get that same stuff.
No, I agree. I agree.
Way less.
That's a bad take. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's my sell of the week. I have another one, but I think we should stick with the RBs. And we should see what Wyatt has for his sell of the week.
So, believe it or not, I'm going to say that for the reason of, he's been a backup for a long time, but he's getting, kind of getting on in years, not that old at 25. Jaylen Warren has been, honestly, and I'm going to say, I think he's the more favorable back in the Steelers' backfield.
You think you should sell him?
I think you should sell him. They have a difficult schedule coming up from here on out.
But dynasty-wise, I think he's going to take over for Najee Harris.
I absolutely consider my perspective is if you are not really in playoff contention, somebody who is going to get a lot more value out of Jaylen Warren. But I could 100% understand not selling him. I think he's going to provide value either way. I don't think Najee is he provides value for sure, but he isn't the best running back in the Steelers' backfield right now. Jaylen Warren is, and it's definitely contentious. I think he's probably the worst sell of the running backs out of this list, but it could still benefit you for the context of the long run.
I think I am completely for selling Jaylen Warren.
I would buy him.
If you are a rebuilding team, I think if you're a contender, by any stretch of the imagination, you need Jaylen Warren on your team. And if you are rebuilding, you are looking at how much money they're paying Najee Harris, how much they are not benching Najee Harris, and how he is starting to kind of get his legs back together at the end of the season here. He still doesn't look great, but he looks better than first 4-game Najee. And
sure.
I think you are saying, what is this backfield in Pittsburgh? What is this offense in Pittsburgh? And maybe that hit at the end of the Green Bay field to Matt Canada actually will start sparking something in him. But
they're not paying Najee. He's on his rookie deal.
Oh, is he still on his rookie deal?
Yeah.
He's going to be asking for money. So maybe, I don't know then.
I wouldn't give it to him.
My issue is the Steelers definitely don't have the Cowboys, the recent trauma. I think
Le'Veon Bell? For real?
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah.
Le'Veon did a lot.
Come on, yeah,
I don't think it's comparable. I don't think it's that comparable.
I think the only reason it's not comparable is because there's not a big price tag associated with it.
Maybe it's just recency bias that I don't see that as comparable, but still.
Dude, that absolutely is. Le'Veon was a dual threat back. He was amazing.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so comparatively on the field for what he offered and brought the team and the amount of money that he was requesting and the big drama stir in the locker room and the media, it was worse in a different way.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a good point. They've been sticking behind Najee and Kenny Pickett. I haven't really liked what I've seen from either of them for 1.5 years at the very least.
I don't think Steelers fans are happy. They're chanting,
but they
Fire
still
Canada
seem stuck
at
on
hockey
it.
Games.
They're still stuck on it.
Yeah,
so
I think they have to be.
They have to be. I think they've entrenched themselves too far.
Too much has been invested in that duo.
All right, go on, Voch.
I think we should move on to our matchup dreams of the week.
Yeah,
and we've all decided that maybe if you are a contending team buying a running back, but if you are trying to rebuild or trying to get rid of some of this older talent to maybe sell your running back with our sells of the week. And I think it's a very contentious topic, and I think it's definitely something that we should debate down in the comments if you guys have any critiques about what you're doing with your running backs right now. But I think we should go into our matchup dreams.
We need to stop soaking up the time.
And Kilger is going to start, which is interesting based off of his performance or letdown player of the week. So interested to see what he has this week.
Yeah, I mean, so my matchup dream is a Trevor Lawrence bounce back game. He laid an egg. It was embarrassing. It was at home. They're playing a division team at home. They're playing Tennessee, which is a terrible team. Statistically, they're the last in the division. They're trying to figure out their quarterback deal. This is a perfect game for if you can call him a veteran, but a older player to step up, reestablish the team, reset the tempo. We are a 6-3 team. We are going to the playoffs. We will be a high seeded team. It is a perfect game for him to bounce back.
You know what they say? You have to lay an egg to be able to feast on omelets, bro. And I think Jacksonville, I think T-Law is going to feast on omelets this week. All right, bro?
Yeah. No, that's my take. And I have skin in this game, so perhaps I'm
taking
biased.
this way too seriously. Can't believe you didn't react even moderately entertained by that.
I loved it. I love it.
All right. Wyatt, who's your matchup dream of the week?
I've got CJ Stroud. He's going up against Arizona. He's gonna put his balls on the table. I don't even know what to tell you. He's gonna walk all over them. I'm not even sorry about it. He's just gonna walk all over them.
I said this earlier. I said this earlier on social. I said, bro's not even going to see a second contract, referring to CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is not going to see a payday after 3 seasons. He's not even going to get a... He might get a rookie extension, a 5th-year option.
Dude, he's rookie of the year.
All right. What does that mean? He's having a good season.
Contention.
I don't disagree with this, but I'm just saying this is not sustainable.
Do you think he won't? He's a top 10 quarterback right now. You don't think he's gonna get a contract?
I think of RG3. RG3 was a top 10 when he came into the league, and where is he now?
So you're projecting a horrific injury.
That was a horrific
Thank you.
injury. But
Yeah, like that's awful, but I guess could happen. I mean,
But
some people said that about Lamar. But he had to fight really long and hard for a second contract.
people said the same thing too about Justin Fields, and Justin Fields is a bottom tier quarterback. So I think
I mean,
I just
we'll see.
don't
If
see
he
anything
gets a
about CJ
contract,
Stroud.
if
Are you
Fields gets a
telling me you're
contract, it'll be
looking
this
at
year.
the reads that CJ Stroud is making right now? You're looking at everything that kid is seeing, and you're like, this dude cannot play football. Whatever is happening is a complete outlier. He can't play football in the future.
No, this
That's what
dude's
you're telling me.
balling. I'm not saying that this dude isn't balling right
But
now.
you think that he won't
Okay.
do that in 2 years?
I don't think he's gonna have a gold jacket.
Well, that's not what I'm arguing.
I don't think this dude's gonna see a second contract. I don't think this dude's gonna be able to qualify. for a
Those
gold
are two
jacket.
very separate, like,
Yeah, all right,
oh,
Wyatt.
yeah, gold jacket, gonna do well 2 years from now.
Mitch Trubisky got a second contract. He's gotten a third contract now. He
Not as a
has
starter.
gotten some contracts. No gold jacket. Like getting a second contract is a very low threshold. CJ Stroud's already met that.
I'd give him it right now. I don't care.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
He can
Yeah,
do
you
nothing.
have to give it to him right now because he's not going to do anything after this season. So you got to die on the high horse. That's all I got to say about that.
This
He's
is a
almost got
crazy hill to die on.
3,000 yards.
This is a crazy hill to die on. This is a crazy hill to die on.
He's gonna have 3,000 yards in 10 games and probably like an 18-3 touchdown to interception ratio as a rookie on a team that had the number 2 and number 3 pick. That's amazing. That is best
I can't
case
wait to
scenario.
bring this up in 2 years.
I know. This is best case scenario for the Texans. Their front office is loving themselves, and as much as they're enjoying it, the Panthers are hating themselves because they don't have CJ Stroud.
I have been wanting to talk about this for so long. Not to say that Bryce Young is a terrible quarterback. I don't think I'm not high on him. CJ Stroud was always my QB1 of this draft. If you watched that Ohio State Georgia game, he was the best player on that field by leaps and bounds. They might have lost. I don't care. He was dominant. It was like watching magic every time he touched the ball. I just can't see how he is a literal wizard.
Wait, what school did he come from?
Ohio State. I don't care.
My point
Go
exactly.
on.
That's case settled.
That's such a stupid
settled.
point. That's
Close
such
your
a dumb
case.
point.
There's
You're literally just like grouping them into a arbitrary category
there's
and
an
being like,
exception to every rule.
won't
There's an
happen.
exception to every rule.
Absolutely. Also,
Bring that
like,
up.
what do they have in common aside from playing for a team in their past?
Having incredible wide receiver skill sets around them.
I mean, you could say the same about like Alabama or LSU or Clemson.
I can say the same
Florida
thing
State.
about Alabama. You can actually very much say the same thing about Alabama. The only reason I think Tua is the exception for that. Hold on. The only reason why I think Tua...
no quarterback that throws at Alabama can be good in the league. I think it's a crapshoot. You could have a Mac Jones and you could have a Tua.
Right now. I think CJ Stroud is a better quarterback than Tua all around right now. I will say that, and I'll say it handedly. I love Tua. I think the hate for Tua was always stupid. I think CJ is a better quarterback right now at this moment. He is a better quarterback.
I mean, that's a hot take.
Hold on.
I don't hate it. I'm just saying he's the best rookie quarterback right now. CJ Stroud, right now, and for the year.
Yeah, whatever Anthony Richardson is going to continue to do, even though he's my quarterback 2 of that class, is not going to be like. It's not going to be the same. I think CJ Stroud is gifted.
Yeah.
All right.
He's got something special.
All right. Now it is my favorite time of the year.
Whole year.
Oh, so serious. All right, let's get it in. In this corner, we have Kilger. What is your oh-so-serious take of the year?
All right, so my serious take of the week is, from what I've seen so far, Dobbs is going to lead the Vikings to the playoffs, and they will win at least one game. He will also, possibly not the Vikings, but he will also be a first-string starting quarterback at the beginning of next year.
I think he's absolutely. Yeah.
Does he get a home game?
No. Possibly, but no. That's going to Lions. I don't know. He has shown enough right now already. Let's call it the Geno Smith factor. He has shown enough already to prove that he deserves a shot. Maybe a Nick Foles kind of deal. Yeah, like someone can, like, he's a piece, and we can slap him in, and we can do pretty well with this. And they're going to win a playoff game this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the NFC, that 7th seed on the NFC is like...
It's a little tough.
It's so thrown up. Like, anyone can really take the wild card in the NFC. So, okay. What about your oh-so-serious take? Sorry. Your oh-so-serious take. Wyatt.
You're going to hate me again. You are going to hate me again. I think Keaton Mitchell is the second coming of Christ in the Ravens backfield. I've talked about him. I was high on him. I think he is unbelievable. That kid is fast. He's so fast. He has insane separation speed. The compliment of him to Lamar Jackson is going to be unbelievable in the future. And I think Gus is a fantastic running back. He is great. I can see the look of like pure hatred on your face right now. The undercurrent of seething anger. He is going to be a fantastic complement to the Ravens play style.
Is he going to be their starting running back next season? Game 1. All injuries aside, everyone healthy. Keaton Mitchell, RB1.
He does have an injury history, but I think he could very well be their RB1 going into the next year.
I need to give fantasy advice to anyone playing Dynasty football is to not invest in the Ravens backfield. I hope everyone understands that, is that you do not invest in the Ravens backfield. Cool. Keaton Mitchell, if you picked him up off of waivers, that is a steal. He is going to do great things for your team for like 5 weeks. And then what? They get Gus Edwards back. They get all these other players back. And then all of a sudden it's a backfield of 4 different backs that can all do something. No, I'm not going to take that. All 4 of them could be viable starters elsewhere, but the Ravens technique, the Ravens way, is they have a running back at quarterback, and then they have 4 as a committee in the backfield. You should have sold Lamar Jackson, sell the farm, sell Keaton Mitchell, sell Gus Edwards. There's a full...
Sell the Ravens.
Sell the 2 seed, 7-3 Ravens. Do you have anyone on that offense?
There's no... In a fantasy value, it's just not there. They're a great team. I'm not going to bash the Ravens, but that fantasy value is not there. The only one that I see potential fantasy value for is Zay Flowers as their only reliable pass catcher.
Mark Andrews?
He's old. It's not an investment. If you have him, that's great.
He's
you can dish him. You can dish
He's
him.
falling apart.
He's like 5 years younger than Kelsey and Gronk when they were still producing.
That's fine.
He's in his 20s.
Almost 30s, bro.
He's got 2 years before he's in his
28.
30s. Yeah.
He's
2
28,
years. Like
bro.
I said, that's 2 years. Like, let's do the math. He's got 2 years before he might be considered old. All right, I'm going to take the reasonable position between these two, and Keaton Mitchell's not the second coming of Christ. He's also not totally worthless.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a hot take, dude.
I'm being reasonable. I feel like I'm the crazy one in between you two. I mean, he's a good player. He'll get you between 12 and 25 points a game. That's great. Like, I like that. Reliable.
All right,
Young.
all right,
Young.
all right.
Thanks for
Dynasty
being
guy.
the
Like, I
reasonable
like it.
man here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
You're welcome.
Time for some logic in this take.
Self.
Oh, no, wait. No,
reasonable.
don't do that. Don't do that. I don't want to hear anything about logic from Slim Shady.
So, my
That's a good
serious take of the week. The Bills need to rebuild. The Bills are not going to win. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. Their upcoming schedule, where is it? They have the Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, and the Dolphins. 6 teams that I do not feel comfortable in this team that just fired their offensive coordinator with a defensive-minded head coach of winning this game with their offensive struggles.
They have no coordinators. I'm not.
No, Gabe Davis is not a reliable wide receiver one. They have a running back.
He's not a wide receiver one.
He's not. He's not.
Not a wide receiver two. Not a wide receiver. Not a legit wide receiver two.
I don't disagree. They need to bring in a wide receiver.
They have a running back that shows a pissy fit when he fumbles the ball in his second time in his career and decides to sit out for a quarter. Are you kidding me? This is the kind of culture the Bills are forming. Let me read you a list of teams.
Your team sucks.
Let me read you a list of teams.
Can I jump in at any of these points, or do I just have to sit here and take it?
I hate to say it, I'm in agreement here.
These are teams that have scored more points against Denver Bronco all year than the Buffalo Bills, who were ranked in the top 5 going into this season.
They score points.
The Jets scored 21. You guys scored 22. Great. You got one more point. You got one more point than a Zach Wilson-led offense. All right, and then you're not going to remind. You don't want to remind Denver about this, but Miami put up 70, and you're expecting to win a division with Miami in it when they put up literally over 3 times the amount of points in Denver. To make that happen.
Can I comment on anything?
Let's let Killer get his piece.
I think the Bills are
You're wrong.
They're in cap hell. That's just like a fact. And they're going to have a tough time keeping the gang together. I do think they need a more reliable wide receiver too. I think that they need to find him in the draft because they just don't have the money to sign someone. But if they could sign someone, that would be great, or trade for someone. There's a reason they didn't. I think Cook is...
Josh Allen should quit his job.
No. I think Cook is pretty good. He sat out for a hot minute. I don't believe that was his choice. I think it was to get his head straight. And when he came back into the game, he looked like he hated the ground. Like, he was ripping off 10-yard runs left and right. He did fumble it again, but it was kind of like a dribble. It was cool. I mean, I bet it'll be on the NFL's Twitter page tomorrow. I think the Bills front office needs to figure themselves out. They do need a new offensive coordinator. They do need a defensive coordinator. They have neither. They are coordinatorless, and they are 5-5 with that schedule moving forward. That's terrifying. I think they'll sweep in as the 7 seed. They won't win the division. But facing Buffalo as the 7 seed is still pretty scary. It's like the 6 and 7 seed are going to be Bengals and Buffalo.
Especially for Josh Allen's receivers.
Yeah.
I say the way to fix Buffalo, and I say this as a Packer fan who wasted Aaron Rodgers' career, but compared to Josh Allen, at least we have a Super Bowl ring to prove it, is you trade away Stephon Diggs for capital, and you use that to find a wide receiver 1 that's lesser value. Stephon Diggs is the way to go. I think the extra draft capital... What?
This is Stephon Diggs' best year, I think. His run after catch, his
fighting
for every single yard. No, I don't think yet.
Because he's the only person on that team that actually wants to win. And he knew that going into this year because he didn't want to come back to the Bills. He had Josh Allen say, come back, we're going to win it all, and now you guys are in contention of missing the playoffs. I don't care what you think. Going in as a number 7 seed when you had Super Bowl intentions, you really want to play in
Dude, a 9
Arrowhead?
and 7 team could win the. I mean,
This
no one
which is
wants
a
to play in
problem.
Arrowhead, but a 9 and 7 team could win the Super Bowl. Like that's irrelevant. All you have to do is make the playoffs and then win 4
I don't
games.
think you even make the playoffs.
I
think
think
you pissed off. I think you're gonna make Diggs
best
walk
case
away this
scenario
season.
is they barely make the playoffs. Brian Dable gets fired. They bring Brian Dable back. They clear up some cap by getting rid of Von Miller, and they, hopefully get some draft picks and pick well and move forward with a nice young squad. It's not a rebuild, but it is like a pivot.
So what about your defense?
What do you mean? I feel like I just addressed that. You have to get rid of the big, expensive old dude on the defensive line and get anything and whatever you can for him. But best case scenario is free up the cap and move forward there. Build around Rousseau and
Rasul.
Ed Oliver. Huh?
Rasul.
I don't know how
Mispronounce
to
his
say
name.
it. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. I don't
You
speak French.
do
I don't
not
know.
get to say that to anyone. You do not get to say anything about mispronouncing players' names, misspelling players' names. You get to say nothing. Okay.
All right. So
it's time to wrap it.
With that, I would like to thank you as well as Wyatt and Kilger. We'd like to thank you for listening to us. We hope to be a big part of your daily commute, your dog walks, or when you're pretending to work. If you have any questions, email Dynasty Depot. Sorry, Dynasty Depot cast at Gmail.
I thought you were asking
follow
us
our
to finish.
socials at Dynasty Depot. We love hearing from our fans, so join us next week for next week's shipment. Peace.
Thanks, guys.